Hello and welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost we are a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or loved one, maybe you're a short time in recovery or maybe it's many, many years, you're going to find all kinds of information and topics related to addiction, recovery, and really living a happy, successful, and sober life at Recovery Today. My name is Rob Hanley. I'm the editor-in-chief of Recovery Today, and as usual, I am joined by another really interesting guest. This one, his company, and everything that you see out there is really creating a lot of positive buzz, and the testimonials that I've read, the videos that I've seen, it's really undeniable. I'm joined by Erik Esparza. He is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of the Ibogaine Wellness Center by David Dardashti. And of course, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to start to peel the onion back and really get into, like, what is this? What is Ibogaine? What does it do? What are the benefits? And what are the whole different things? Because it's only been a few years I started to hear about this, and so we wanted to connect. So, Erik, thanks for taking a minute to jump on.
Well, excellent. Well, listen, I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to, share a little bit more about Ibogaine. Specifically, one of the techniques that we're going to share a little bit further in this interview, but it's pretty awesome that we're kind of expanding our horizons on different things when it comes to recovery, because at the end of the day, we all want to get well, and we want to be able to offer a service to somebody that might be struggling, and there are alternatives out there, so this is definitely a huge alternative, and being able to shed a positive light on it is really huge, and I really appreciate you having me on today.
For sure. Absolutely, and I make really no bones about it that most of the content that we have within Recovery Today is probably abstinence-based, traditional kind of 12-step. It's just kind of, that's probably the biggest group overall that's out there. But really what we're interested in is we're just interested in one single person who might be watching today or yesterday or last month or last year to help them to move along and to stay sober for one more day, to turn their life around. So I want to look at everything that's out there, and this just continues to grow and grow and grow, all of the buzz and stuff like that I've seen. So I guess first of all, I have seen a lot of videos. You guys do a lot of testimonials. There's a lot of stuff that's on YouTube. You guys really seem to dominate that's out there. And when we spoke, I was really impressed with your background, the kind of the clinical side. Some of the things you'd mentioned was kind of data-driven type of stuff, and outcome, I think, was the word that you used. So first of all, tell our readers a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
What your background is, your experience, and then let's kind of start to get into, like, what is this Ibogaine stuff? What is this?
All right, so I'm going to kind of go back roughly 13 years. And this is when I finally was hit in the back of the head hard enough by the cosmic 2x4, where myself, I had some challenges with alcoholism in the past. And that's a story for another day. However,
Sure.
I was finally woken up at that point to finally really say maybe I have a challenge here that I need to address and improve, because I had a lot of consequences. During that time, I went to a rehabilitation center in South Florida, and I was just there going through the regular 30-day program. And this girl came into the program, and she said that she had gone to Mexico to do something called Ibogaine for heroin addiction. And I was like, what? I was like, what is this? So everybody in our little rehab group, we were all like, asking her all these questions. And that was the first time that I ever heard about this particular substance. So long story short, I got my life back together, started getting some manageability back in my life. Previous to going to rehab, I had a business and lost my business. So I was slowly getting my life back together. But during this point, I had worked through the steps with my sponsor, and I started sponsoring people, and I was like, you know what? This is what I want to be when I grow up. I was like, this is like really cool, like helping people, and I could really like get into it and make like a profession on this. So, I had a bachelor's that I already had before, so I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to school for this. So I went back to school to become a therapist and to really get heavily involved into this and to really help out at a capacity where I understood it from a different level. Through my studies, I really got more focused on substance abuse, and that's kind of how I ended up working in the different rehab facilities in South Florida for a number of years. And what's real interesting is, even though I really, really, truly enjoyed like the one-on-one and therapy and stuff like that, I found myself falling into the place more for program design within the rehabs. And then also, I was actually, just by chance, during all my practicum and everything I was doing while I was getting my certification to be a therapist, I got put in the alumni program. And it was during that time when I started working in the alumni department, to where I started to realize that this is the department where we can start measuring outcomes to see how really well these people are doing with the treatment they're doing. So I was actually introduced to setting up the databases and all that kind of stuff, and that's where like the whole program development and all that stuff started to really flourish at that point. So
you're following up with people and seeing like,
yeah.
Hey, how you doing? We're checking in. This is months or 2 months, 3
yes.
months, 6 months after.
Exactly. So we were really, the real big thing is, and we all understand this, is the continuum of care when people do leave treatment, right? There's certain treatment centers that utilize different kinds of what's the word I'm looking for, different kinds of amino acids or different kinds of therapies, whatever it might be, so we can track all these things. So that's really kind of where I fell in over about a good 6-year period, is building out these alumni programs for these rehabs. And what we are noticing is that you could utilize that data for a couple of different things. Number one, to be able to assess your program. Number two, it is a real good way to be able to see, like, you know, how well these people are doing, and if they need help, to bring them back in to get help ASAP. And then lastly, like, you know, when it comes down to just really measuring the efficacy of your program, when an insurance company is saying, well, how good is your program? Well, here's the numbers right here. Yeah. So that's kind of the way that I fell in doing that. And then I helped them to put together programs in the rehabs that would help us to get the best outcome and the continuum of care to take place. And that's kind of where I fell into this whole thing. So that's a little bit about my background. But then how did the Ibogaine thing come back into the picture? Well, while I was actually back in school to become a therapist, I bumped into Mr. Dardashti, and during that time I was supporting myself as a photographer.
And David Dardashti is the guy that, David Dardashti, this is Ibogaine Wellness Center by David Dardashti. He's like he's the founder, right?
Yes, he is the founder of the company that I work for currently. So going back a number of years, about 8 years ago, I bumped into him, and he knew me as a photographer. And he said, hey, I have a place in Mexico that I'm helping to, like, you know, get going that does this investigational treatment thing. I would love for you to come down and do some video documentary stuff and some photos. I'll fly you down there. And I was like, that sounds like a really cool thing. He's going to pick up the tab and I get to take pictures. That's amazing. So I went down there, and come to find out, it was an Ibogaine treatment facility. And it was the most beautiful thing that I was able to experience, of like videoing these people tell me their testimonies of what they experienced and kind of like what it was before and everything. And then I was just like in love at that moment. And so David and I continued that relationship.
It had to be a little bit, I don't want to jump too far ahead,
yeah.
But it had to be a little bit surreal as well, what they were kind of saying.
It was very interesting what these people were talking about. I'd love to get into more detail about like each individual's personal experience they had with this stuff, and I was just kind of like, this is like way out there, man. I was just like, this is pretty awesome. And I knew a little bit about it from the conversation I had with that girl years ago, but this is where I got really involved in this. So I was working with David at a capacity of just kind of doing some video work and kind of doing some marketing work and stuff like that off and on with him over the years, and we just really had this relationship. But I was really invested in this, in the treatment facility thing, because I was still getting my certification through the state, and it's like so many hours you have to put in. It's like 3 years of, it's like 6,000 hours before you can get certified. So I had to like stay in that field. So long story short, it was back in August, and the treatment facility that I was currently working at was about to change hands. And it's the craziest thing how the universe works. I can't even explain to this. We all know how like the universe works in like so many different ways for all of us, that I get a call from Mr. Dardashti on a Friday, and he goes, Eric, I need you to come and work for me in Mexico. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love to, like right now, but I'm like so invested in this rehab that I'm working in right now. Like there's no way I can leave this. Like things are happening here, right? So I said, well, let me think about it. You know, maybe I'll take a weekend off and like go and see him or whatever and do some video work, kind of how we did in the past. And So that Monday, the owner of the facility comes in and says, "We're about to sell this rehab here," and we all know what that means.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, so let's see, alumni department, is that really needed? You know, I was just kind of like doing this assessment in my mind, and I'd set up an operation that kind of ran itself, so it's kind of like it's push button at that point, you know, to where things are operating. And so being in a director position, it's kind of like those are the first things they're going to let go. So I was kind of like, all right. So after that day was over, I said, "Mr. Dardashti, when can we make this happen?" He goes, "Yesterday." So it took off, and really what I'm able to bring to the plate and really what we're working on here is being able to utilize all that experience that I've had in the past, where we're able to really create a solid program, solid continuum of care networking, as well as being able to measure like what the efficacy of this NuroStimulus technique is, and being able to apply it in a whole bunch of different areas, which we'll speak about in a little bit, just to really see how powerful this thing really is, that we can kind of really shed a light on something amazing. Because this gentleman's 69 years old, and he's a workaholic, but he really needs someone that can really help him dial this in and present it to the world in a way that hasn't been presented before. So that's how I've really come into the picture, and that's kind of what we're really working on.
How ironic that we use the word workaholic in it. I think probably better to just say he's overly passionate, you know.
He is super passionate.
Okay, so the elephant in the room, because I don't want to go too deep in this, is we'll get into the process that you guys do, but what itself is Ibogaine? What is this? Okay,
so obviously Ibogaine is one of the components utilized in the NuroStimulus technique. So we'll get kind of into what Ibogaine is, what its origins is, and then where David gets this substance from. So real simple. Ibogaine's been used for thousands of years. Anybody can research this online by these West African tribes for different types of ceremonies. The only way that I can really describe maybe one that would make sense to somebody is when a young man's kind of going through his like bar mitzvah or whatever it is. It's kind of like this vision quest they go on. Rite of passage, exactly. So they go on the rite of passage, and they take this substance, which is the bark of a shrub that they have there. They grind it into a powder, and they ingest it, and then obviously they have this experience, right? It's a very psychoactive experience, so they go and they, you know, have their vision quest come back. All right, they're ready to be a man. Whatever the message they need to hear, the plant told them what they needed to hear, right?
Right.
So it's been utilized by the shamans there in the villages for all sorts of different medicinal needs, whatever it might be. So that's its origins. So where does it come in to be helping people with opiates? So back years ago, Howard Lotsoff discovered Iboga, excuse me. It's Iboga is the name of the substance, not Ibogaine. Iboga is where Ibogaine originates from. It's very important to understand that, because there's a huge difference in the two. Iboga and Ibogaine are two different things. So they discovered, Howard Lotsoff, that there was a component inside of the Iboga root bark that was very, very powerful in being able to interrupt the withdrawals that people would have coming off of opiates. And of course, like any person that would discover something amazing like that, this guy went on this total journey to be able to really do some discovery with that.
When did that happen? Is it 100 years ago? Or?
No, it was like it was probably like, mid 1900s, like 1950, somewhere around in that time, I believe. My math might be a little bit off because I don't have the stats currently in front of me.
50, 60 years ago.
Right, 50, 60 years ago, the gentleman discovered this, and they did a lot of discovery on this particular substance. So fast forward into like the 90s, they really started doing some serious research into this substance that they found inside of the Iboga called Ibogaine. Okay. Ibogaine, Iboga, has 12 different alkaloids in it. And one of the alkaloids that's inside of that is called Ibogaine. It is probably one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories on this planet. Okay. However, in order to extract the Ibogaine, it goes through a huge process. So David actually has a chemist that's based out of, I guess, Southwest Africa or somewhere around in there, that literally gets 2,200 pounds of Iboga to be able to extract 2.2 pounds or 1 kilo of Ibogaine. All right? This stuff is
2,000 pounds to 2 pounds, basically.
Yes. is 1/1000th.
1/1000th. Okay, all right.
So we're talking about some of the most powerful substance that's extracted from this root bark. Okay, and that is what he uses in order to be able to treat the individuals at his facility. So that is kind of the description of where Ibogaine truly comes from.
Okay, let's jump into that his part though, which is, I know that we talked about this. Well, it's Ibogaine, yes, but the bigger thing is this whole process that he came up with, this NuroStimulus technique. So, let's lay that out and talk about like how that is, what's different, all the things like that. So they have this root bark, this Ibogaine, 1/1000th of a, 1,000 pounds makes a pound, 2,000 makes two. So very, very, I don't know, pure or whatever it is. It's, distilled down. What's this kind of this process that he came up with, though, this NuroStimulus? What is that? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of back up first of where David kind of came into the picture here. So when he first came in to start working with this Ibogaine, it was completely by chance. Okay. And he was actually working with a group that I was explaining to you earlier. And originally that group was struggling, like really, really struggling, and they needed like an investor to come in to kind of help them get everything back together because they were only getting. A while ago, right?
Oh yeah, this is, gosh, almost 12 years ago, something like that, almost 15 years ago. I think it may almost be almost 15 years ago is what this happened a while back. So he came in with this group, and he was able to help them get back on their feet. And he was actually just kind of like just overseeing anything. He really wasn't working with the Ibogaine, but he saw the doctor work with it, and he got this place from going from like 1 patient a month to like, 10, 15 patients a month. So it was thriving. And then something happened to kind of where there was a disagreement or whatever, and David decided he was just going to just leave the game. He was like, I don't want to do this anymore or whatever. But his wife at the time, who was one of the head nurses there, she said, you know so much about this. Why don't you do this yourself? And originally, the way that they used to do the Ibogaine treatment at this facility, and it's done pretty much standard everywhere, is what they do is called it's called a flood dose, meaning like they basically do your assessment, they they measure you how much do you weigh, and then they will literally give you a very large dose of Ibogaine, and that's how they've been doing it for a very long time, and it has a very like psychoactive effect on it. Okay. So that's how it's done at the very beginning. I do want to get into that because the common thing is that you go on some kind of a trip. Right. So we'll come back to that. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is kind of clarify where he came from to where he's at now with this NuroStimulus. So fast forward, he kind of said, you know what, let's do this. And his wife, who was a nurse, kind of helped him get going on this thing. And then he realized something, that this is like a cookie cutter way of doing it. This is like human beings have individual spirits. They have individual souls, and like, he comes from a background of like studying the Talmud and the Kabbalah and all these different things, and he's like, there has to be a different way to do this to get the best possible outcome for whatever it is that we're treating these people. And that's where the development of this NuroStimulus technique started to begin evolving, to where it became this how we assess the people clinically, how we assess them medically, if they've ever had any trauma, and really taking a look at all their labs and everything to really put together a treatment process that really would be able to get the best outcome. So that's kind of the evolution of where David started and to how he started to evolve to understand that this is not a cookie cutter process. It is a 100% individual process and journey. Okay. So what is the NuroStimulus then? Okay. So basically, as I was describing, the NuroStimulus technique is it's no longer the flood dose. Okay. That was what I was describing just a minute ago, where they give a person this large amount of Ibogaine, and they go through their experience, and it takes 2 to 3 days, or let me back up. When they do take it, they're having the experience for anywhere from 12 to 36 hours, and then it takes the body about 2 to 3 days to recover from that. Like they're just very like lethargic, don't have a lot of energy, and it's very taxing on both the heart and the liver, because the liver is the one that really breaks this stuff down and processes the Ibogaine into something that's called Ibogaine, which we'll get into a little bit description a bit later, but that's like the magical substance that the body creates once it processes that. But it's just so much effort the body has to put in that there may be some safety issues and other things that you may run across, even utilizing the most purest of Ibogaine that you can get. Okay? So David, one of his most important things that he is all about is safety. Like safety is key to the point when he makes his assessments with everyone, he analyzes all the blood and everything, their mental assessments and their physical assessments, all the stuff he does as a doctor that's most important to make sure this person is a candidate to do this. Okay? And then to be able to just make it that much safer, what he does is if a person is coming in from an 8-day treatment to a 14-day treatment, say for short-acting opiates or long-acting opiates, after he does the assessment with this person, they literally are going to be given the Ibogaine. Let's just say a person coming in for long-acting opiates, okay? They're going to be given 3 full treatments over a 14-day period, okay? Full treatment meaning they're giving a large amount of, not a huge dose, but they're given the correct amount of Ibogaine 3 different times.
It's not the flood amount.
It is not the flood. He goes, we don't do the flood dose because we are not plumbers. That's what he always tells people, okay? So the idea is that once they do that amount of Ibogaine, literally it's a 6 to 8 hour experience, and they can literally go to the beach that same day. They can go to the pool.
Are they tripping though? Is it like going on a trip and they're tripped out and stuff like that, or? So okay, so I'll explain this. So during those 3 experiences they have, in between those experiences also, more Ibogaine is given in smaller doses in between those. So we're talking about 14 days of the highest quality Ibogaine, which I forgot to mention before. The gentleman who produced it for us, we get 99.9% pure pharmaceutical grade Ibogaine is given to this individual for those days. Okay. So now going back to what the person experiences during the Ibogaine, once they're given the Ibogaine during the NuroStimulus technique, the only way that I can really explain this to you, Rob, from a clinical understanding and kind of maybe having, I've done different types of psychoactive things back in my rave party days and things like that. Yeah, back in the day. From a clinical understanding, okay, there's 2 things happening. We're going to the clinical, and then we're going to get into the medical second. Number 1, okay, everybody has to understand that Ibogaine, number 1, is not a drug. Okay, it's not a holistic drug. It's a trigger. Okay, it is something that triggers something to happen inside of the body. Okay, and in the mind. When the Ibogaine is processed by the liver, it goes up the backbone and it just triggers the body to do something. Number 1, it literally, our ego, which is the filter, okay? Our ego is constantly running and running. It judges everything that goes in and out. It's our survival mechanism. The ego is basically put to sleep just for a while, okay? And once that ego goes to sleep, that's when you're allowed into the subconscious mind. We don't call it a trip. We don't call it hallucination. We call it a perceptual journey, okay? It is a journey of perception within your own mind. Okay, so you're allowed to be able to look at things in your mind, whether it's trauma, whether it's negative belief systems, whatever it might be that the Ibogaine is trying to guide you to, it is trying to show you something in this perceptual realm here. Okay, and as a clinician, and I have seen people that have struggled with negative belief systems for so long that they continue getting these just outcomes and they don't understand why, that all of a sudden that the Ibogaine presented them. The reason why this is happening to you is because you believe this. Whether it's I'm not good enough, I'm a piece of you-know-what, or whatever these belief systems are, they're able to identify what these belief systems are, and then once they come out of the treatment, then we can begin processing, what these visions are that these individuals may be having. From an alcoholistic, a no Bill W type of a thing is the moment of clarity, right? In a moment of clarity, I realized. So is it something that when I'm hearing that's kind of what I'm thinking, that maybe and I know that we're so wired for fear and to protect ourselves. It's interesting because we'll self-sabotage, right, based on some kind of a belief about whatever it would be or some kind of a trauma, that things are locked away. And kind of what I'm getting, and I don't want to steer necessarily the conversation, but like what I'm thinking is like, is it am I right to go, it's kind of like maybe this activates or it puts to sleep, whatever, something in your brain to where you can actually more critically look and say, have a moment of clarity and go, oh, wow, like, that's why. Am I off?
I think, no, you're very, very big on that. And so that's really interesting how it works is because once you're in the subconscious mind, there is no right, there is no wrong. It just is there, okay? And in that place, whatever it is going to continue to be playing. And then when you can see what that is, you're like, oh, my God, maybe that's it. So to be able to identify or have that moment of clarity, it's at that point, then you can begin the healing process or the relearning process because now you're able to identify really, truly what's going on behind that curtain. Because at the end of the day, the ego is just our survival mechanism. It's going to do whatever it can to stay alive, and if it's good or bad, whatever it is, it just wants to so we stay alive. So that's kind of the idea. So that's the deep mental piece of the Ibogaine, right? So simultaneously, once the body's triggered, the second piece happens, and this is the beautiful thing that where the people who come in specifically for opiate use disorder really find it pretty amazing how this works, is that once the body is literally triggered, the central nervous system is just awakened, right? So it really puts your body, one of the most sophisticated machines ever built, that knows to, if you break your arm, it knows to heal itself, you know? If you get sick, you know, like a cold, it knows to go in to start healing itself. But for something has happened in our bodies to where all these illnesses and stuff that are happening that they can't basically, the body's not able to fix them as quickly as it did before. But what happens is that when this body is triggered, it goes into this state to where it's like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it begins identifying things and healing within your body. So we've had people come in.
Physiological healing.
Physiological healing. And that's where the people that come in for opiate use disorder, the reason they come and see us is because the whole thing with opiate withdrawal is very, very painful. You know, and there's a lot of depression and anxiety and all kinds of stuff that come with that particular withdrawal process.
Yep.
And basically, David describes it as that whenever an individual is taking opiates, it's like the receptors get very, very close to one another. And then as they discontinue using it over time, they get further and further away each time you discontinue using it to where the pain becomes, you know, incredibly painful until they come back into setting at the correct distance. So what happens
is neurons in your brain, you're saying?
Yeah, the neurons in your brain. So what David describes is that the Ibogaine is able to like fix that balance in the brain, and that's why people are able to bypass the whole withdrawal component that comes with discontinuing both short-acting opiates and long-acting opiates, which is probably one of the most amazing things, and that's where it's been the most researched, is in that field of how amazing
that is. Let me kind of just say that again, because that really is so remarkable, and I did see this and everything, is that through this process, they're able to bypass, as a word that you're using, this horrible withdrawal, the painful withdrawal. I mean, there's lots of things that are out there. We talk, we advocate, we spotlight things that'll ease pain or stuff like that. But you're saying like bypass.
So yeah, and that's what has been one of the biggest draws for this. So I'm not going to say bypass, like you're just like take it and then you can go and like you're good like the next week. You know, obviously if you've been putting a substance into your body for a very, very long period of time,
I'm just talking about the sweats and the pain and all things like that. Not like you're going to go back and you're going to have a six-figure job and you're going to get your family back and things like that. But I'm just talking specifically about like the scary as hell part of withdrawing.
Yes, the scariest hell part is the one that's bypassed. Okay, obviously there's still some discomfort and things that take place, but you know that's just part of any kind of. The only way that David can explain is you basically have gone through a body and brain surgery. That's it.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of healing that still needs to take place. However, if you utilize, we have a group that we work with that does like amino acid therapy and different things like that can help expedite, you know, to get you feeling a lot better, a lot faster.
Yeah, because your body's probably pretty beat up too.
It is. I mean, you beat it up for a long time. Now you removed what it's been using forever, and then now it's kind of like it's going to have to recalibrate a little bit. So there's ways to be able to recalibrate it to where that you can really get to a very balanced place.
Okay, so let me spotlight this a little bit too. Is that my question was, people say that you go on a trip, like it's LSD or it's mushrooms or something like that, and so your answer is no. I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's. We don't like to call it
something. What was the therapy that you said?
It's a perceptual journey. Okay?
Perceptual journey.
Yeah,
okay.
Because a trip is something out there. Okay, a trip is something out there that's happening. Basically, this is how David describes it. Okay, this is a journey within. This is a journey within to your soul, to your spirit, whatever you want to call it, to the subconscious. That it is going to reveal things to you. So just like the young men that would have the iboga reveal things to them, or the plant reveal things to them, the plant is going into your subconscious to reveal things to you.
Okay.
And that's kind of the only way that I can really describe it. People will call and say it was a trip or whatever, but the way that we describe it, kind of the way that works best, is truly is a perceptual journey within.
Okay, so then let's jump a little bit to like what happens. Like I know that we're talking about the kind of like the what do they say? The anecdotal, like what do people say after they do this?
Okay, so are you saying like basically their afterthoughts about having the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the videos, and we'll put some of the things in this feature too, because we want to spotlight it the right way. But like, what kind of results do you see? What do people say?
All right, so I actually we had a gentleman that came in. He was on buprenorphine for 13 years. Okay, this guy was from Hawaii. He loved to surf, and he has an amazing family, and he has been trying to get off this stuff for so long, to the point like it was crippling him. He was just a real psychologically just not unstable, but was just in a really challenging place in life and did not know how to get off of this stuff. Okay, and we flew him down. And we treated him with Ibogaine, for 14 days. And, I mean, it took a lot of work to get this because of the amount this guy was on for so long.
13 years.
13 years of this stuff, right? So if I'm being real with you, like the first month for him was like, it was tough still. It was kind of like, I've been having this stuff in my body for so long. Like I'm like tired a little bit, like my sleeping patterns are off and everything. Like I tried to go out surfing and my energy really wasn't there. And so he was kind of like, and we'd give him some supplements and things to take and everything. So fast forward to 2.5 months later, I get a call from this guy yesterday. He said he was surfing 20-foot waves with like tiger sharks out in the water and everything. He says he haven't had so much energy ever in his entire life. Like he goes out and runs every single day. Like the Ibogaine is just gone in and it just awoke his body to like repair all the stuff. It's like, it's preparing, but it's not going to like a tune up like that. I mean, it literally is going in there in your body.
But it's not like you send him off with a pocket of Ibogaine to go home or something.
No, definitely. We didn't send him off with a pocket of Ibogaine. You do go home and you do have some amino acids and things like that are definitely highly recommended.
But the treatment's done.
It's done. The minute you leave, you're good. All right.
Well, what about therapy? Do they do? I mean, once they unlock stuff, 100%. I mean, they find out like, oh my God, like I'd block this out. My mother, my father, my brother, my Cub Scout. I mean, they find out. They open. What kind of therapy do they do? Therapy? Like what happens after they, discover? Holy crap! I've been. This is no wonder why.
Exactly. So. One of the obviously, since they're only with us for a very short amount of time, that our therapists can only like really help process.
So you do have therapists that are there.
Yeah, we do have therapists that are there, and I'm usually there like about 1 week out of every month. I fly down there and work with some of the guests as well. Mm-hmm. But one of the big things that we do is that we have coaches that it just depends on what path people want to go on. If they want to go to the therapy path, then we get them set up and everything with the therapist typically before they come, so that they can like work with this individual when they go home as their continuum of care plan. We have coaches that we also work with that can continue to help these people like really just kind of readjust to life after they do this. And then also there's the different types of like 12-step or the group type programs that are available to these people, but we always push continuum of care because continuum of care is so important that once this person has this experience or once this person's mind is really ready to like take on this recovery thing, it needs to really be like taken advantage of. at that point. And I'll
So
explain
it's
one.
it's a long-lasting than moment of clarity. It's not a moment, but is that right?
Yes, and let me explain it to you this way. So the way that I explain it to people whenever I'm having a conversation and like them kind of unsure how Ibogaine works is when you and I were in our first like 5 years of our life, that's typically when the brain is the most like pliable, and that's where we build our belief systems, right? Good, bad, mommy, daddy, you know, all the environments around us, that is where those beliefs are initially created, right? So as we go through time, you know, later on in life, that's almost hard-coded into who we are, and that's kind of how we make our decisions, you know, in our life. So the only thing I can really explain that happens to these people is that the mind goes back into that sort of state, okay? And it's about a good 120 days when that mind is back into that malleable state where they're able to identify certain things. And if they can get into a recovery, any kind of support system in that time frame, they'll be able to really get it and start changing those beliefs really, really quickly. Because another thing I forgot to mention is that a lot of disease and illness that we have in our lives is based upon our beliefs. Like we have beliefs inside of us that truly do keep us sick for a very long time. And then when we're able to identify and release these beliefs, it takes the stress off the body where the illnesses are starting to be in. So if you can change,
is that I think that most everything is energetic in some way.
Yes,
I also believe that almost like a tuning fork, that you know some kind of trauma happens, and then where a tuning fork actually you know it's going to eventually stop vibrating. Right. My own non-scientific opinion is that this tuning fork actually probably eventually gets locked away somewhere in the deep recesses of your mind, and it's still energetic. I think you actually still, you know, law of attraction-ish type of stuff. I still think you bring things on, or you create a fight or flight type of a deal to either affirm beliefs that you have. This kind of, it always happens, or this or that, or whatever it is. So I find this really, really, really fascinating, but you're not advocating a 12-step, a non-12-step, a this, or that, or the other. It's more, do you guide the people to like, this is what you might want to do, or?
We say these are your options that you have.
Okay.
Some go with the coaches that we provide at our facilities. Some already have coaches set up. Some have already been going to a 12-step program previously that's like, you know, let's get back involved in this. But the continuous care piece is so important, because the individual that, like we all know, goes back home, goes back into the old way of living, this and that, it's only a matter of time to where the mind will get into enough pain again to where they may fall back on negative, what they call coping skills.
Okay, so I got to ask this is, you know, I don't want to go, well, of course it is, but like, this is safe. This is safe?
100%.
And if there's doctors that are there, it's not, you know.
Yes. So David will always say that this particular treatment, the NuroStimulus technique, which incorporates the Ibogaine, is safe as taking 2 aspirin. Okay. Now, outside of that, there is at our facility, basically it's a hospital, but it's run out of a very nice home. Okay, so we have everything that you would expect to see inside of a hospital, but it's in a very comfortable atmosphere where people feel a lot more.
I know I've been not to where you are exactly, but you're down in like Cancun or Playa del Carmen or something like that. You're in the Caribbean, right?
Exactly. So we're right there in the Yucatan Peninsula there in Playa del Carmen, and our facility is actually located in a resort, so it's very safe. It's gated. And that's
a nice place for sure.
It is nice. So I mean, we have our main doctor that we work with. There's always nurses on staff, and then we always have our psychologists and everything that are on staff. So we have a lot of staff that are there, basically overseeing the place. It is basically like, it is a treatment center.
Okay, I'm going to start peppering you with some questions because I have a whole list of questions that are here.
Okay, go for it.
So first of all, it's a great foundation for it. I have a lot better understanding. I kept seeing this. And like I said, I was thinking like, oh, you go on some kind of trip or something like that, but I get it. It's this kind of this introspection that happens, and I would just probably say maybe it's a moment of clarity is what comes up for me. But what caught my attention, we're talking a lot about opiates and long-term norepinephrine, all these different kind of things, but what blew me away was some of the non-substance abuse type of stuff. Like we're talking about food addictions, bulimia and anorexia, sex addiction, love addiction, even in gambling. I mean, how it was almost like, I mean, so comment on that a little bit. I even saw bipolar, ADD. Like, I mean, how really? I mean, really, it's hard to wrap your mind around this.
Okay. So this is kind of where we're trying to really start to position our particular treatment, because we don't, number one, we don't want to be the end all. Okay, saying, hey, come and do us, and then you're going to be healed or whatever. We're actually looking.
Then I'm going to lose weight and be tan.
Exactly. Yeah, that's not what happens.
Okay.
So
Right.
The idea is that there are professionals working with people right now that are struggling with these exact same things that you just stated.
Yeah.
However, they may have not been able to make the improvement or get the outcome that they truly want. So we're trying to position Ibogaine as an option or an intervention that they can utilize to be able to get this person to a place that they really have been trying to work for a long time. So how does that work? Okay, so that's your question to me. So it's the same exact process. It really comes down to the gambling, the sex, whatever the habit is that we're talking about here comes down to a belief system. There is a belief system that is dictating that kind of behavior that individual is experiencing, and they just don't know how to truly identify what it is that's mirroring that in their life, right?
And depression as well, anxiety, I assume.
Right. So depression and anxiety are a little bit different. How I'll explain those two things. But when it comes to the addiction piece, they go into that perceptual experience. And it's in that perceptual experience that they're able to identify and see the belief systems or the trauma that they may have when they were younger that took place that maybe they had locked away and forgotten about, that they're able to be opened up into this place that would take years of psychotherapy or even hypnosis to really dig down into, that Ibogaine in literally a week can help to identify that after they're done, they can continue to work with their professionals, work with their groups, or whatever it might be to process this correctly, to be able to really make some significant changes in that person's recovery from whatever it might be.
The whole time I was thinking of hypnosis, and there's a saying that I love, that you're not the tape. It's kind of an old thing because now we don't have cassette tapes anymore. But back in the day, it was like, the saying was that you are not the tape that's playing in your head. You're not the program, you're the computer. You're not the tape, you're the tape player. And so I like the whole idea of hypnosis, because I'm a believer that we are today the sum of all of the actions that we've had, and then the actions that we had came from the beliefs that we had and the faith and all the other things like that that led. So this is interesting, because I do think I like the whole journey of the mind kind of deal. I mean, people all over the world have been doing this kind of stuff. Oh, somebody just came in there.
No problem.
But anyhow, okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. All good. But I like the whole idea of getting this moment of clarity. I kind of got thrown off there for a second. But so all of these non-substance abuse type stuff, you were going to talk about depression.
Okay. I do want to share one other thing when it comes to, we had a gentleman that came in for obesity. And I'll kind of give you he had a handful of doctors that came in with him to deal with this, because obviously it's not a food issue.
He brought doctors with him. He brought
his doctors with him from Colombia to come and see David, with David's doctors there in Playa del Carmen. Okay? This guy had been suffering. He's one of the biggest rabbis in South America, and he'd been suffering for obesity for years. And we all know that it has nothing to do with food. It has nothing to do with food, right? It's something else deeper, right? Yeah. He said when he did the Ibogaine, he said he had thoughts, and he realized that it had nothing to do with that. Like, it gave him, like, just be able to look in to see what the real true problem was that was going on in his life that led to that. So he was able to process whatever those things that took place, within his life and the belief system that he had. He goes, it's not the food, it's my belief system that I had. And this guy was saying it. It wasn't the clinician saying this, it was him. And I was like, yes, thank you. I was blown away at how beautiful this thing is. So that kind of gives you some insight on how it works with the addiction component, whatever the addiction might be. All right. So now, talking also about the anxiety and the depression component. All right. And these are really big topics. And actually, we're going to post a video like any day soon where we have David and our doctor were kind of going back and forth about the NuroStimulus technique, and then also talking about some of this new investigation they've been doing into what is anxiety and what is depression. And their findings, or what they're understanding now, is that those anxiety and depression are linked to inflammation, like literally inflammation in the brain, is what they're starting to research now. And why Ibogaine is so effective on these individuals is because, like I said at the very beginning, that Ibogaine is one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories on this planet.
So when guys come down there like me or something like that, that they have this experience and they, you know, all the stuff that we talk about, do they also go, God, my shoulder doesn't hurt anymore too, or my backache went away? Does that happen also?
We don't like to say that, but that's not something that we want to push. But yeah. I'm telling you, like, people come home and they're like, "Wow, I had these problems with, you know, XYZ type thing, and like I can't believe like that's like cleared up, or I'm not feeling the way that I did before." It
is a huge topic for me, and we're going to go way too long if I start going into like inflammation. But I remember seeing some kind of mainstream magazine, Newsweek or something, 5, 6, 8, 10 years ago, that said that doctors believe that the root of all illness or disease is actually inflammation. And everybody knows now from the Atkins diet, from keto, from Dr. Perricone, you know, and fish diets and things like that, that we do want to reduce inflammation in the body. And I find all of that fascinating. I find Parkinson's and brain disorders fascinating based on kind of a sugary diet that we have, which everybody knows is inflammation. So I think that's really, really, really cool. But here's what I want to get to. I mean, it's pretty exciting, I guess I'd say, and you're cool to talk to because you're so enthusiastic about it. But why is this? Maybe my perception is wrong. I was going to say, why is this controversial, or is it controversial, or was it controversial? I mean, you just said like it's safe. You know, why are we going even to Mexico? Why is it controversial?
Okay, so basically, like where the controversy comes up is during the times when Ibogaine was like, you know, brought into the States and was starting to utilize, that the gentleman Howard Lotsoff was basically like kind of put down the drug companies and what they were doing, and you know, it's like just talking about this Ibogaine thing, and he went on, you know, on live TV and everything, and put them all down, and it kind of brought the hammer down.
You don't do that.
So that kind of killed it for the studies like really happening in the States, especially with, at that time it was for opiate use disorder, so they literally had to head out to the islands, which is in like St. Kitts.
They're probably telling them, don't you know, like we already have a plan, it's called Suboxone, and we make that. So
exactly. So
for the rest of your life you can stay on Suboxone.
Right. So of course, like they instilled fear and everything, but you know, at the same time, you know, people can go on the web and things like that and order stuff which they have no idea where it's coming from, if it's safe or anything like that, or if it even is Ibogaine, you know, or Iboga or whatever it is. So the thing is, like with David, it's like we're a medical facility. We're legitimately a hospital that's providing this service, you know, to help people, you know, from a very trained staff. He's been doing it for 15 years, and he's developed this technique that he has that is it's safe and very, very effective. And there's a lot of protocols that go in before any person puts any of that stuff into their system.
How many people would you say have come down and done this, would you say? I mean, just ballparked.
Jeez, gosh. Up
15
like,
years, you said? I mean,
well over 7,500 people.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he's worked with a lot of people, and you know, it's been amazing what we've seen this amazing substance do over the years, and hopefully to be with the research and stuff that we're doing and measuring these outcomes, that we can start seeing, like you said, with the body aches and things like that. We're not making claims that we need to have our research and stuff in place first before we can ever come out and say, like, you know, it can help with this and that. But there are many posts and stuff that you can find out there of other stuff that Ibogaine really, truly does.
Needless to say, it's not like you're taking insurance and Medicare and, you know, Aetna and stuff like that. This is cash, wire, credit card type of thing.
Exactly. So in the United States alone, people spend over $3 billion out of pocket for alternative services, whatever that might be. So there's a huge market for people that are willing to go outside of their regular insurance or whatever it is for different types of care. So yes, this is 100% out of pocket, that people do have to pay because obviously we're based in Mexico, so we don't take insurance.
Right.
But that's how we operate.
Well, I understand as we started to talk about this is not something for everybody. I don't think anything is for everybody, by the way. I really do believe that we're all individuals. We're kind of where we're at experience-wise. But I'm very alternative, and I'm very open-minded, and I like to have our magazine be open-minded. Like I said at the beginning, we don't really care. If something is safe and it is going to, and it's helping people, we want to talk about it. Everything that we've done is, is very abstinent-based. I think you yourself are abstinent-based in your background and your training. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that can help people, we want to tell people about it. And whether we do or not, there's people talking about this now. Right. And maybe it's more of a connectedness in the world. But I thought it very reasonable to get together and to have kind of this conversation. So I think this is really cool. Do people come down and do this that are not actively in addiction, or do they do it for other things?
No, we have lots of people come down for wellness boost. We also are actually really a lot of executives actually come down here for something that we have called executive reset. A lot of executives get burnt out and stuff like that, and it might not be that they're using drugs or anything, but they're just done. And they'll come down for a good week, do the treatment, and literally within a couple of weeks, these guys' brains are firing at a place that has never fired. The amount of energy and their relationship, even with their wife, improves. I mean, everything. So we have a lot of people that come.
Executive reset isn't like a pet shop owner. That's like a corporate executive, right?
So that's what we're calling it. It's kind of it's a treatment for executive burnout. But we treat executives that come down, people that just want some kind of clarity in their life for a wellness type boost, and it's a pretty amazing experience for.
I think I just want to come down. I want to bring my wife down, go scuba diving, and get a little bit of Ibogaine and have some meals.
That's it. That's it.
The whole bit. Well, this is really, really interesting. I think that you really shed a great spotlight on this. I'm grateful that you have that you do have the clinical background. I was very excited when you started talking about outcomes and things like that, because my assumption is that this is outcome based and you're starting to track a lot of this kind of stuff. 7,500 people is a lot, and the testimonials just were on and on and on and on. So I think it's cool, man. We're going to follow this. I appreciate your time. And we'll continue on.
Well, excellent. Well, listen, I really appreciate bringing us on here and really kind of putting what we do, the NuroStimulus technique, Ibogaine, in a new light, to where people can see that it's not just only for opiates, that it just has so many more applications, which we're really looking into to really research.
It's pretty crazy. It sounds like it's too good to be true. But by the way, how do people get in touch with you?
Okay, so they can come onto our website, which is IbogaineClinic.com, mm-hmm. And they can also call us. We have a 1-800 number, which is 1-800-818-4511. And it's either going to be me or David that's going to pick up that phone. And, well, if it's 2 in the morning, we have an answering service. But pretty much I'm going to be the one answering the phone to be able to walk anybody through about, the process and, any kind of questions they have. But, yeah, or you can just leave us an inquiry right there, and we'll follow right back up with you.
So people want to learn more information, kind of explore, see if it might be for them, what the ins and outs. They have their own questions I didn't ask or something like that. They can contact, and they'll probably talk to you.
Yeah, and our website has a lot of really good information, and it does really dive deeper into the NuroStimulus technique and then also what Ibogaine really is. So it's pretty informative. Yeah, and then in this feature from the video here and the feature that's in the magazine here, we'll have a lot of information, on Ibogaine and some stuff from your website and things like that we've kind of gathered around. And as I said, also probably some testimonials for some people as well. So I think it's cool stuff. Well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, Erik. And this has been another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine, recoverytodaymagazine.com. And hang on just a second. I'll clear out the recording.